I'd like to call this regular business meeting of the Loveland Board of Education to order at 6 o'clock and ask Mr. Giuffre for a roll call.
Mr. Daugherty. Reverend Eilert.
Here.
Dr. Lorenz.
Here.
Dr. Schwetzenow.
Here.
And Mrs. Washburn.
Here. Just a note that Mr. Daugherty is out of town this evening, so he will not be here. Also a note, as usual, we are recording this meeting. We are streaming this meeting. I believe that Mr. Daugherty has let me know that he is watching the meeting, so he will be happy to know that we started at 6 o'clock. And we welcome all of our guests online, and we will report that. Question?
Notice that the pledge is missing from the agenda.
That the Pledge of Allegiance? No, it's there. It's in a few minutes. We put it, I don't know why we moved it down, but anyway, it's there. We'll get the Pledge of Allegiance. I thought maybe you meant the flag
I
wasn't
see.
here. Anyway,
First.
moving right along, the first item on our agenda is to adopt the agenda. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second. Reverend Eilert moved and Mrs. Washburn seconded. There have been no additions unless there are HR additions. I think there might have been a date change in HR, but. Okay. Otherwise, it is the agenda that you saw on board docs. There have been, from the original posting, there have been a couple of administrative items that were removed that are not on the agenda. Those will be discussed a little bit later and will be showing up later, but that is the agenda that you saw on board docs. Any questions? Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Dr. Schwetzenow.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes, motion carried. The first item is to approve minutes of January 19th, 2023 meeting, and I will make that motion. Is there a second? Second. Mrs. Washburn seconded. I did review these minutes once they were posted on board docs. I found a couple of name changes. So those have been name spellings that were incorrect, so we got those fixed. Are there any additions, corrections, any questions about the minutes for January 19th? Then can we vote on that, Mr. Giuffre?
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzenow.
Yes.
Motion carried. We also have minutes from the January 31st meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Dr. Swetchnow moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Reverend Eilert seconded. A little bit reluctant to move and second this evening. We're going to have to snap this up here. Any questions or corrections to the January 31st minutes? Seeing none, can we vote on that, Mr. Giuffre?
Dr. Schwetzenow.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
And Mrs. Washburn.
Yes. Motion carried. Now I get to the point in the agenda where I welcome the guests. For those of you who are viewing online, we do have some guests here in the audience. I think many of the folks, or several of the folks we have, will be introduced for part of the presentation, but we welcome our guests who are here to listen to the meeting. If there is anyone who wanted to speak during hearing of the public, there's a sign-in sheet available over on the table there that you can get to Mr. Giuffre before we get to the hearing of the public. And for those who are online, we are meeting in person in the Loveland Middle School Intermediate Media Center. And as I mentioned before, we are streaming the meeting and recording the meeting. And now I would invite you to stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on the agenda is a presentation this evening by Kenna Haycox. And she is from OSBA, from the policy, or presenting from the policy division. As you all may know, we've talked a lot about policy over the past year or so. We have done some work on our own, done some work with our legal counsel, and it was Mr. Giuffre and my opinion that we should get a presentation from OSBA about what they can do for us for policy services. And so we'll have Kenna present. She said she's happy to take questions, and we'll go from there.
Okay. All right, thank you for the opportunity to be here. My goal today is to give you an overview of OSBA policy services, answer any questions you have along the way, really on why we pride ourselves in our services and what it would look like if you were to move forward with a contract with OSBA. So I'll go ahead and jump into my first slide about why we would choose OSBA, why OSBA for policy. So I think that one of the things that really sets us apart is that we manage all our policies in-house. So our policy manual, our updates to it, the review of legislation, the writing of them, the communicating it, we manage all of that in-house. So as policy consultants, working with actually reviewing the legislation, that allows us to much more effectively answer your questions if they come up, because we have the knowledge base of what is changed and why. And then we also are able to pull in, our transportation staff, our board services staff, our legislative division to assist us in updating and communicating those policy updates. Obviously, with being OSBA, we take a board-centered approach. This is your policy manual. We work with individual boards to say, how can we help you in adjusting these policies or updating them to reflect your district goals and operations. Our policies are customizable to the extent allowable, right? So there are some areas where you just can't change it. So a good example districts have been dealing with over the past couple of years is the new federal regulations for how you handle sexual harassment complaints. We can't change that, but there are some areas where you can customize. So what we do is we make that clear. We will clearly indicate if there's a choice. So if there's areas where you can pick or choose, or I see a student representative on the board, that's always encouraging to see. That's an area, for example, where we have some sample language for districts who may want to put that into policy to say, here's what you would do. We also, throughout the process, will work with districts to say, could we maybe change it to this or that, and work with you through that. Obviously, we would say, there may be times where you would need to confirm something with legal counsel, for example, or there may just be areas where you can't change it. So we would work with you to understand that. The other thing that I think is really helpful for the manual is the manual structure and how we have it designed for both ease of use and updating. And so one of the things I want to talk about here briefly is that we work to write our policies in a way that are accessible by the entire school community, recognizing that every school has, parents accessing the manual, perhaps students. And so we want to make sure that it's easily understandable. And then I want to talk a little bit about how the manual is structured, if you don't mind jumping to the next slide for me. So I gave you an example of kind of how our manual is structured. I also, for the board members, I gave you a packet of information, and the first stapled together document is a resource for you. This goes into a lot of detail on how the manual is structured. It breaks this down a little bit more, but I wanted you to have that as a resource. So if you could go to the next slide, one of the areas I want to highlight in particular is how we work to avoid potential inconsistencies across the manual. So one of those areas I like to highlight is how we manage our personnel policies. So there are some policies that apply to all personnel in the district, regardless of whether they are professional or support staff. Easy examples of those are the Family Medical Leave Act, for example, equal opportunity employment. And so we structure those in a manner where if you see a policy here that starts with our codes, GA or GP, that means it applies to all staff. And then where statute dictates a different operation for personnel, that's when we split it out. So your contract requirements and evaluation requirements, those are going to be separated out where you have to have different language. And so they're all in that personnel section, but then the GC would be the ones where now we're talking about professional. GD would be, okay, now we're talking about support. I also gave you some examples here just, as a resource on kind of what these chapters mean. So for instruction and students, instruction is basically what you're offering to students, and students is how they're interacting with the districts. That's where you're going to see your conduct policies. If you could go to the next slide for me. One of the things to highlight is that one of our distinctions is that we include policies and procedures or regulations, as well as any potential forms, all within the same manual. So the benefit to that is if there's a procedure to implement something and it's right in that same section, right after that policy, then best practice is when you look at updating the policy, you're going to also look at that regulation that goes along with it. Okay, so you're not having to worry about, oh, I've got to go to this book and remember to update that. And so the example I gave here is you have AC is non-discrimination, ACA, non-discrimination on the basis of sex, and then you have ACAA, sexual harassment, and then the ACAA-R indicates that's the regulation, the procedural information to go with the policy. And then the -E indicates that that would be a form. Once again, in your packets, I wanted to give you an example of what some of OSBA's policies look like. And so I gave you one that I believe if you go to the next slide, it has a screenshot. Yes, so it is EDE. Copper Hill Schools is my fake school district, just so you know. That's the fake district we use. But this is an example of a policy, and then the -R, the regulation that would go along with it, and then the -E, just so that way you can kind of see how the policies are structured, how they're laid out, and how they're written, you know, how we do OSBA policy style for how, for communicating the policies. Let me see here. Ooh, it just got dark. There we go. That is easier to see there, but, and so you also will see on the policies, toward, I think the bottom on the first one, the EDE, you should be able to see that we would, have live links to your legal references, for example. So that is a great benefit. It's a tool for the district. And then there's some informational notes that we provide when we give sample policies. So that's just an overview of how OSBA manages policy, how the manual is structured. And then I would like to talk a little bit about what it would look like if the district were to decide to switch and go through the process to update the manual. Prior to that, are there any questions on kind of how OSBA does our policy services in general for keeping our manual current, or how it's structured? Any questions on that I can answer?
I had a couple quick
Yeah.
ones that just occurred to me. You gave us the information that it's all in-house and that you can consult facilities people, you can consult transportation people. Are all of the policies reviewed by legal counsel within OSBA as well? Is that?
Yeah, so we work with our legal team. All OSBA services, if you notice in contracts, say we don't give you legal advice. We review them internally for compliance.
Okay. Then just on physical appearance, two questions. Would they appear, what we currently have on board docs has a, whatever the number is, and it has a title. Would this also show up as it does here, that A would say foundations and basic commitments, the title would be there before the policies begin?
So it, our default is how you see it on the printed one. And I knew I wouldn't have my laptop up here, so I did not pull up the live site. But hang on one second, I'm sorry. So yeah, so it would, like if you were looking at it on the left, you would have the policy code and then the title below it. And then it would show what section it is in. When you do a print to PDF, it kind of breaks that down for the titles here.
I was thinking about
Yeah,
how it would
sorry.
show up, because this will show up on board docs. I mean, this
Yes.
will be as our policies are in board docs.
Yes.
But
Yep.
there'll be titles to sections so that you can
Yes.
easily figure out which
Yep.
section you want to go to.
Yes, there are titles to sections, yes.
And then would this be sortable for administrators to pull out the regulations so that, I'm not sure that board docs would let us do this, but could administrators have the regulations in a form so that they don't have to go through all the policies to get to the regulations? I'm thinking,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I'm thinking
No.
back to that paper book that we had where.
It was
we-
on yellow paper, right?
Well,
And
well, it was on yellow paper, but then when we had new policies, we put it on pink paper.
Okay.
And then when we updated, I think we put it on green paper. So it was a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
system that we had. But what we did have was different colors for the regulations so that somebody could easily flip to a regulation. What I'm
Yeah.
thinking of is how does a a school building, or how does a department easily get to all the regulations that apply to certain things that they have to do in their daily business?
Yeah, so there's a couple options. One would be you could do an easy search of the dash R. I personally am hesitant to split regulations out into a separate book because they tie so hand in hand to the policy. So, I mean, I think that would be a local decision we could work with
Okay.
you on. But that is one option, is to kind of have a search. Another thing I'll talk about too is, you know, one of the options is to do an in-service on how the new manual is structured. Once you would transition to that, but we could work with you on that. You can also favorite policies. You could bookmark individual ones. We encourage, you know, our building administrators in particular to kind of, even in handbooks, share the direct link to that policy. A note on that, we have a process in place to keep that link constant, even if you change that policy. So if you make updates to policy JFCF on hazing and bullying, and you've posted that link somewhere, if you update it, you're not going to have to repost that link, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we also archive and retire your prior versions, and you would have access to those still in the authenticated view of board docs. So we can definitely work through that to see what might work best for you.
It wasn't an
staying
issue,
current.
especially since we are somewhat behind in the
Yeah.
regulations creation. And so getting them wherever they are, I think people will be able to find them where they are. I was just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a good
the best way
question.
to say them. Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to ask two questions. One was the link police. When a link breaks, is that you or is that us?
So that if you notice it's not working, we wouldn't go and check them all, but you would
Okay.
just need to let us know and we could resolve that, help you resolve that.
And then I believe, I know you're going to touch on this, if you're going to, that's fine, but you said something that just really got my attention, which is that you go and find our regulations and our existing documentation rather than create it. And if you already said that, or if you're going to say that, then you can mention it when you get there. CBAs, manuals, all handbooks.
Yeah, so I'll get to how we review that when we get to the rewrite service, if that works okay.
Okay. Super, thanks.
Are there
Any-
questions on the overall structure? Okay. So then if you could transition to the next, that was the regulation, and then we have the exhibit. Those are the ones you have the hard copies of. I want to take a little bit of time now to talk about what our premium policy service is. So as we talk about this, best practice recommends that boards consider doing a full review of the entire policy manual every 5 years. Why? Collective bargaining agreement changes, administration changes, board changes. While you can stay on top of compliance, there can be those areas where the district has really chosen to customize that may no longer be reflective of practice. And so the premium policy service would be the contract that the district would enter into to move forward with that. And so the cost for that is the $11,250 plus applicable fees. So we try to keep those fees low. So for example, all our policy manual meetings are managed online. And so I think I have done, since we transitioned to the online platform, I believe all of my nitty gritty, every single policy review meetings have been done virtually effectively, which obviously saves on costs and expenses for traveling down. So we can definitely work with you on that. Everything is delivered in an online format, which makes it for easy interactions on the drafts and working through that. So if the district were to move forward with the contract, what we would do is we keep our master manual current. And so we would take the OSBA style manual as a base. And then we would request the documents that you began to refer to, your current handbooks, your current collective bargaining agreements or negotiated agreements, and then your current policy manual and administrative guidelines. So we review those details. I have a handy dandy Excel sheet that I do. So basically we look at that so that when we get to the OSBA samples, I can say, okay, here's the article on Ohio Teacher Evaluation System. What do I need to know? And then we would also look, for example, at, okay, we're at the public participation policy. How does the district currently implement public participation? So we can do our homework to get you a first draft that to the extent possible is hopefully what we can do on our desk, right? So we work through that and then we would provide that entire customized manual to the district. At that time, We then would schedule meetings with the district to review every policy being presented. As we present policies, we will make sure it is clear if it's a required policy, if it's one that is just strongly recommended, or if it's one that is just totally, optional. And so a lot of the first meeting is, customizing those things we can't 100% confirm with just looking at those documents. And so we would work through that. As we work through the meetings, there are various options for board involvement. That's always a question I receive. This varies by district, and that's where we work with you to see what works best. Sometimes you may have a board member go through everything, or some districts may say, let's just get through the nitty gritty, the basic, here's what we have to do by law, and then maybe flag some to say, okay, let's look at these with the board policy committee, or let's look at these with the board as a whole. The benefit to the software we use is we could go through the whole manual to just get it all squared away for compliance, and then move everything we'd need to discuss with maybe a board policy committee or the whole board into one section, and then just knock through those. So it's a little bit easier. So there's some various options there. And then like I mentioned, we typically have done those via Zoom, just to allow for, expense. And I share my screen. We would work on all the same drafts so you could see what we were changing. As we go through those changes, we also keep detailed notes on decisions being made during the meetings. And so we would make all those changes, incorporate them into what we call a second draft, and we would provide that to the district along with a summary report. Would you mind going to my next slide for me, please? Okay, so this is a screenshot of it. I also in your packet gave you a sample summary report. So I know not everybody loves board policy, as crazy as that sounds, but what we do with this summary document, and this is just a sample, it should be a chart that you see, is we work to capture decisions made during those meetings, right? So areas where we could customize. So for example, that just gave you some of the examples there. We might be updating compliance officers. We might be keeping or removing permissive language. So the goal with that is so that if, individual board members were not in attendance at all the nitty-gritty review, they could go there and say, okay, these are some of the key areas where we really customize to Loveland schools. We also can highlight, and I had a couple examples on there, ones where, during the discussions it may say, let's have the whole board to discuss this, okay? Once again, we can flag those in one section for you to look at and work through that. So one option would be to then, what I've had some districts do is then schedule a meeting, a work session with the full board to work through those, answer any questions, not go through every single policy, but just high level, here's how we got where we are. Do you have any questions? Make additional changes if we need to, and then the board would adopt that manual, at which time you would transition to the online service. The contract, if you could jump ahead a slide, please. Oh, yep, there we go. I talked about that a little bit. The contract includes up to 25 hours of the direct consultation. So that would be the nitty-gritty review, all the policies and the meetings. And then if you wanted an in-service on the manual with the district, that could be included in those 25 hours as well. So that's what the process would look like. What questions do you have on that process to basically transition an entire manual?
I just have one more at this point. I think when we include, if we do this the OSBA way and include the regulations, again, we are not very up to date on the regulations. When we then adopt this manual, if we do it this way, are we adopting the regulations so that anytime a regulation changes, it would need board action to change that?
Typically, yes. I've had some districts who have wanted to not go through that, so we would have to work through that. There would be some where we would have to still have the board approved. So one that comes to mind, for example, is like hazing and bullying and sexual harassment. Those would be areas where that procedural act information, if the board did not approve it, it would not meet the statute where the requirements for that. So if you wanted to have a process in place to say, we don't want to improve regulations, just the policy, we would work through that with you, both for the adoption process of the manual as a whole, as well as the updating moving forward.
I only asked that question
Yeah, it's a
because the regulations are more on the level of the building administration, the district administration. Those are their guidelines of how they do things.
Yeah.
And if they see a need to change that is not related to what the laws are, but simply, we're going to do this at this time in the school day as opposed to that time in the school day. If it's in the board policy manual, it just concerns me that they can't make any changes unless the board then approves them. So I'm just looking at
Yeah.
it as a little clunky that way.
Yeah, and we do try to keep those to a minimum, and we try to keep the level of detail at the level that there's still flexibility and autonomy to update things. A lot of times we see a lot more of those details in the handbook level. So I think the whole process helps administrators, if they're involved, to understand the intersection between policy and handbooks.
Okay.
You know, your board policy on student dress code's pretty general, but then your handbooks are gonna go into more the nitty gritty, right? So we definitely work through that, and we don't want to add anything that's gonna tie the hands of the district and administration.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good questions. Other questions on that process?
I
Yeah.
just have some more
No,
high-level
please do.
questions.
Yeah.
Obviously, you do this for school boards all the time. How often do you run into the situation in which you're redoing entire manuals, as you had just referenced?
That is most of my job. Yeah. So, we currently have around 20 active districts we're working with right now on the full manual rewrite. And we encourage you, you know, to reach out, you know, to see districts who have done it as well. But that's what keeps me busy, is working with districts on that. I recently worked with Sycamore Schools. I know they're down here. And so it's constant. So, we do work with districts. I mean, we've constantly had a high number of districts working with us. And it kind of staggers, right, based on that recommendation for review. Does that help answer the
No,
question?
that definitely helps answer the question. The follow-up to that was, what is typically the length of that process? And I understand it can vary dramatically based on how much time the board and the administration have to devote to it as well. But what is your vision of how long that process takes?
Yeah, so when the district enters into a contract, we will then sit down to kind of say, okay, here's a timeline we're looking at. We balance that based on, you know, what the district would like to see versus our capacity, right? So I will say the longest wait time on the district end is from when you sign the contract for us to be ready to meet with you. So there's a lot of research that goes into it, especially with switching from a Neola district. I would say that if the district were to move forward with a contract, you know, in the next couple months, you would probably be looking at late spring, early summer, that we'd be prepared to sit down and meet with you to go through things. From there, it depends on how quickly the district wants to meet, how often you want to meet, and how long those meetings go. And so that is something that we have found, rather than trying to lock in a set timeline, we work with districts to say, okay, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? And then be candid with you about, if you were to tell me I want to meet with you in May, or April, I'd be like, you know, we can't give you a good product in that time frame. So work with you on that, rather than having a set, we have to finish it in 6 months. I would say typically contracts, especially from transitioning from one provider to another, are in that 12 to 14 month time frame.
Okay, that's helpful. And then the third part of that is the contract included 25 hours of consultation. Is that typically enough for a full kind of rewrite project?
Typically, yes. So that is for just the meetings with you. That's not my desk work. So I've only had a couple districts who have needed extra hours, and we work with them. You know, we're not like, I'm not counting every 15 minutes or whatever, but we have found that that allows us to effectively work with districts transitioning from one system to another. And I've been doing this 11 years, and I think there's been maybe 2 districts I've ever billed extra hours under the contract.
Great. Those are all the questions I
Great
have.
questions.
Would this you mentioned that every 5 years review is recommended.
Mhm.
Would that be this same thing every 5 years, or would that be a more streamlined process?
So once the district transitions, we do offer several other levels of services. So there is a more streamlined approach, where basically it would be a lower cost, and it would just be a more strict compliance view, right? So we'd say you missed these updates, or areas like you had information on a student on the board. Is that still accurate? So if a policy didn't need changes, we wouldn't even discuss it. We would just move it forward as is. So it is much more streamlined moving forward once you kind of do that full transition. Great question.
Thanks.
You're saying generally you don't do any updates for 5 years, so there's not a kind of annual contract where you're
Yeah.
doing ongoing updates with?
No, thanks for the clarifying question. Districts do need to stay updated through the online services contract. So we lump our services into kind of what I call maintenance service or online hosting, and that's our manual's in good shape. We just need to now stay current moving forward. And then what we call our rewrite services, where you say, we need a consultant to look at it in conjunction with our local documents, right? So negotiated agreements, handbooks, things like that. That's what we recommend every 5 years, but we push out updates to all users every quarter to stay on top of it from the compliance standpoint. Does that help answer that question?
What does that annual contract look like?
Yeah, so that is actually our online services contract. If you want to jump to the next slide, I can go over that. So this would, upon adoption of the manual, your manual would be published to your board doc site, and then at that time, your annual policy services contract would become active. The cost for that is $1,040 annually. That reflects the fact that you're a board docs governance client. So if you ever dropped that, your cost would increase to $1,540 because we get an extra $500 cost. You'd have your published manual with the links that we referred to. And then what we do, if you could jump to the next slide for me, please, is we notify you through a newsletter, which is called the Policy Development Quarterly, which we release quarterly. So we release that every February, May, August, and November. Once again, if you can go to the packet of information I provided you with a copy of our most recent Policy Development Quarterly publication. And so it looks, I think there's a screenshot of it. Yes. So it looks like that. Your copy hopefully printed a little better than mine, but maybe not. But basically what that is it would be also accessible in your board doc site. You would be able to go there to review the articles. We provide in-depth articles so you know why we're recommending changing things, as well as considerations for what you may need to do when adopting them. We also will highlight areas where we know we don't have an OSBA sample on it, but we know districts may have language that conflicts with a statutory change. So we highlight that through there. And then we, along with that, provide updated sample policies. And if you could go to the next slide for me. So here's an example. So we're going to show you what's changing to the OSBA samples. We make it clear with what's being changed there. And then we have a process in place for you to work to incorporate that language into your locally adopted policies to submit to us for updating. Once again, in your packets, I gave you some examples of some policy changes that went along with that most recent PDQ issue, so you can kind of see what that looks like there. And so that is how we recommend you stay current, is to review those changes when they come out. We also provide a free webinar with each issue for an opportunity for questions, and then we record that and post that for later viewing also. We also are accessible anytime. If you have questions, you can pick up the phone, shoot me an email to say, hey, we have questions on this, and we can work with you on that. The benefit to having things in the board doc site too is we can interact with you on those drafts if you have questions. And then once the board adopts, our support team will activate your updated language for you, clean it up, make it look pretty, archive your drafts, retire the old versions, and work to get that current for you. So that is how we recommend staying on top of it moving forward. So 4 times a year. I think you probably do about 2 right now.
Yes, and so you have dedicated staff. What the district would need is to indicate someone here in the district who is responsible for getting that physical change to the OSBA staff, who then puts it up in board docs.
Yes, who we publish it on the active end.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, just because I don't know what this means. However, if you are a board docs governance client, what exactly is that?
Yeah, sorry. So that means you use board docs for meetings. You have a license to use the board docs software. That's what that means. So if you were to ever drop that, then you would become a board docs policy only, at which time OSBA would have an extra $500 cost we would pass on to you. Does that help answer that question? So if you ever said, we're not going to do board docs for software, then your cost would change for that online policy services contract.
And I think you mentioned something to me in conversation that we are currently a board docs governance district. And because we have a different policy consultant, that is who the policy goes through right now. And so it's going to encumber some cost for OSBA until we make that switch, if we make that switch.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So until you adopt this new manual, obviously you're governed by your current policies. And so your current contract would cover that until you transitioned. And so we cannot provide you anything through your board docs meeting site while you were still under contract with another provider. So logistically, what we'll do is we'll set up one of those standalone policy sites for your drafts and everything to interact with you. The technical side of it, working through with board docs about single sign-ons, any of that, I will work with them on that, but you would have a standalone one for accessing the drafts. And that's why the online policy contract you would enter into around when you're getting ready to adopt, because it can't go active until we can actually connect to you there.
Anything else from board members? Did we get to the end of your?
Good question. I always forget. Yes, you did. There's my contact information and my cards. And then you have that packet of information too. Questions on anything else related to OSBA policy services, the process?
Just
Yeah.
if I missed it, I apologize, but administrative guidelines along with the policies, how does that, we finish up the policies first, obviously, but
So
No.
the regulations are done as part of the project. So
Okay.
those are the -Rs. And they are not near to the level of what you would currently have for an administrative guidelines book.
Okay.
How we have treated that though is we have handbook services that are separate because we found that, things are kept more current in like an employee handbook or a student handbook. And those are different services options, but that's how we address some more of the procedural stuff that's not addressed in the policy project. If you're ever interested in that, those are also offered at a discounted price if you do it as part of a policy project.
And you would be able, or OSBA staff would be able to tell us what, when you look at our handbooks and our negotiated agreements, you would be able to give us a sense of, once we have the regulations in place, what is probably advised to have in addition to the regulations as far as procedures are
Yeah, so
concerned.
we work to highlight that some during the meetings. I will say it's not a full, okay, now you need to definitely add this to student handbooks. That would be one of those add-on services. But we are more than happy to give you our fancy dancy little Excel sheet that says this student handbook said this and it didn't line up maybe with policy. So you can take it and work with it. But that's what I've had some districts do is just, what were your notes? How can I adjust that?
Okay, thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
So timeline.
Yeah.
June and July are obviously a little lighter for us to be able to focus on something like this and really get things moving along. I would assume that between now and then that we would come up with a timeline of when we're planning on accomplishing certain goals. I think overall, if we could get this done by the end of this calendar year, we'd be pretty thrilled with that. I don't think that's asking too much because we've already put a lot of time in. We've already taken out over 100 policies that were low in value, which it would be something that we could hand to you so you can
Yeah,
go through and
that'd be
kick those out the door. Yeah, so and our attorney has helped us along the way of identifying those. So I think maybe initially just sharing with you where we are in that
Okay.
regard.
Just for the board's information, one of the reasons that, we suggested we have this presentation and consider switching to the OSBA service, as I mentioned to you, we had a paper book years ago, and then we were using the OSBA policy services for a while, and then we switched to another consultant. We were finding that we were not able to really keep up with what's going on. That wasn't necessarily the fault of anybody in the district, the fault of the consultant. It was a matter of changing administrations, things that were going on, and we were just not where we needed to be. We have tried to make some changes working through our legal counsel, and so we have gotten some things accomplished there. But what we've learned while doing that is that we really probably cannot do policy without a consulting service. We cannot be sure that we have the right policies. We cannot be sure that we're keeping up to date with them. And we cannot encumber specific personnel in the district who would be doing that either. In other words, we'd be looking at hiring someone to do it as opposed to continuing with a consultant. So that's why we asked for the OSBA presentation. The resolution is on the board agenda this evening, but if there are additional questions, there's no reason that we can't put that resolution off for another month. It was just there because we had the presentation, and if the board is ready to consider it, we can consider it. If the board has more questions, wants more information, we can put it off a little longer too. Okay, so just so the board is aware where we are. And the reason I say that is Kenna needs to drive back to Columbus.
I'm happy
And
to-
I suggested to her that she is more than welcome to stay till the end of the meeting, but that is not necessary, and that if we have additional questions, we can get to OSBA and get some answers. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Sorry, can I just, I
No,
pulled
thank
up
you.
that contract, and
Yeah.
I'm just looking back at the fee structure part. One of the lines says, if requested by the board, consultant will review additional handbooks or collective bargaining agreements at a rate of $200 per handbook. It sounded like that was included, but what was the additional? and why
Yes,
is
so
that
how many
added to
collective
it?
bargaining agreements do you have? Two?
Two.
Okay, so we've had districts who we have worked with who have like 4 collective bargaining agreements. And so looking at our costs, the build-in on that that's why we added that additional. The same with handbooks, if we have districts, so we would basically look for what's your elementary handbook, what's your middle, what's your high school, and then go from there. So if you're wanting us to review additional ones beyond that, that's where that additional charge would come in. That was a pricing change for this year. But that is really to address the ones where we're being asked to review a higher number of documents, which also can delay the process a little bit too. Does that help answer that question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I
Yep.
understood that.
Yes, thank you.
But if we're satisfied with our handbook, you're just using that to implement as a guideline.
So we would look at it. So, we would often districts may update a handbook and forget to update policy, right? So there might be something on a suspension appeal process or graduation requirements. There might be differences between two, hopefully not, but if there are, that's one of the things we would flag to say, what's current? What do we need to do? So that's why we review those so that we're not coming in blind to the meeting, right? Like I like knowing a little bit, or I like knowing how your district operates to the extent possible. So that's where we review the handbooks to gather some of that information. But unless you have like 4 or 5 collective bargaining agreements and 20 handbooks you want us to look at, I don't see an issue with those additional charges. And I think it says specifically in the contract, up to 2 collective bargaining agreements and I believe 1 handbook per building level. That would be up in the, so up in the first point, it says existing policy manual handbooks, 1 per building level and up to 2 collective bargaining agreements. It's up at the first point under services provided by the consultant, the research of materials including, so that's what is included without the additional fee.
And we are in fairly good shape with handbooks in the sense that we have available what is consistent across the handbooks
Great.
as opposed to what is individual to a particular building.
Great.
So,
And those are usually like the what time do you start and end and what time's your lunch and bell schedule, things I don't need to know for policy. So if we can know that core information, that helps us in reviewing those. Other questions? Great questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you very much.
Well, I
Thanks for
appreciate the
your time.
opportunity to be here and let me know if you have any questions and we hope to have the opportunity to work with you. And like I said, if you want to reach out to districts, feel free. I can give you more referrals as well if that would be beneficial. If you want to reach out and see how the policy process works and as you make a decision to move forward. So thank you all very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip back.
Yes, please have a
Thank
safe trip back
you.
to Columbus. Thank you. All right, board, okay with the OSBA policy presentation? Then we will move to hearing of the public. Mr. Giuffre.
I have no one signed up for hearing the public that I'm aware of.
Absolutely. All right, I think you have presented before, or perhaps not. I will give you the rundown of the hearing of the public. We have 3 minutes per speaker, and we have a 30-minute time limit, but since we have one speaker, 3 minutes, we're good to go. Thank you. Okay, and could we, sorry, I know you've given your name to Mr. Giuffre, so we've got that, but would you tell the audience your name?
Yes, my name is John Purban. I live at so I'm a parent with children in Loveland School for the last 12 years. My wife and I have one son in college and 2 daughters in high school. Our children, we feel, need and benefit from quality, publicly funded every individual child in our community. We at large benefits from strong, well-supported schools, the value they create, and the education and inspiration of students and contributing citizens. I'm convinced that our schools need updated funding to stay strong and continue to provide these benefits to all of us. Our students have already experienced losses in services and opportunities due to the delayed update in school financing.
That ought to help.
Thank you. Even so, many administrators and teachers have taken on increased and in some cases heroic but unsustainable extra responsibilities. They've done this while giving up the typical cost of living wage increases that many of us in today's tight labor market have recently been given. So as one example, our high school band director, Jeffrey Miller, had been responsible for 3 concert bands, along with marching band, pep band, and probably several other things that I'm not aware of. And when the spring 2020 levy request didn't pass, we lost our only other band staff member at the high school. Mr. Miller took on the leadership of our 2 jazz bands. Now, some may wonder why we have 2 jazz bands, and that is simply because of the number of talented and engaged students in our music program. Sorry, lost my slide. And the middle school programs that also feed it. So losing the opportunity for 5th graders to begin their musical journey, which was another loss in 2020, has definitely impacted our music programs and student growth. But we're so thankful that Mr. Miller took on that extra load because our son benefited from 6 years of jazz band and went on to play jazz in college under scholarship. So very many students have similarly benefited from the arts within their academic pursuits. Speaking of my son, I also want to highlight Mrs. Chast, who is a highly valuable chemistry teacher at LHS. For a subject that many students struggle with, Mrs. Chast was one of my son's favorite teachers. Her rigorous AP class was one of the toughest that he had, and through it, she prepared them for college and inspired him and multiple of his classmates to take up chemistry and chemical engineering as majors. She is the kind of teacher that we want to be able to sustain and build upon within our schools. I could go on and on about the curricular and extracurricular programs that benefit our students and our community. So when we talk about sporting events and arts and music and theater events that enrich our lives and provide connection points, these also bring positive name recognition way outside of our own town. These are valuable, tangible outcomes to cherish and to strive to preserve. So I'm convinced that our schools need an update and an increase to their funding to preserve what we have today, much more to grow and envision even greater things for our students. So as for us and our community of friends, parents, students, and alumni, we will support the levy to secure needed funding for our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
3 minutes exactly. Thank you very much. And that was the only sign-in, Mr. Giuffre.
The only
Thank
one I'm
you.
aware of.
All right, then we will move on to, as usual, administrator reports. Those reports are in board docs available under public content. Those are for board review in order to deal with items that will come up in the agenda. I would suggest that particularly this evening, the business office board memo gave us some information, but that will be discussed as we get to those items as resolutions. So those are there. My board president report will be fairly short. We have not had a lot of correspondence since our last meeting. There have been a couple of issues dealing with records requests that have come through the treasurer's office, have not come directly to the board. So we have seen those. We have had correspondence from Rachel Baker, who is the Ohio House District number 27 representative. She has invited school districts that are in her area, in her district, to a meet and greet this Saturday. Is that correct? It's the 25th of February. And I have responded that I will attend that. I believe that Dr. Swetchnow said he would attend. Any board member is welcome to come. I'm sure she has sent those to all of us, but wanted to make you aware of that. I wanted to make you aware that I do not believe there is sufficient discussion needed for a March 7th work session. So we are contemplating canceling that meeting unless anybody at this table has business that they wish to discuss. I see Mr. Broadwater shaking his head, but I could have a board member pipe up and say, I want to have a meeting, I want to have a meeting. But I think that we will be able to handle issues this evening and then at our regular March meeting. So I think that we can cancel the March 7th. I will let you know that you have received information about the March 9th Southwest Region meeting. That is a good opportunity. I don't attend those too often, but I will be attending this one. So that is on March 9th. And then our next meeting would be March 21st, our regular meeting. You have received through the superintendent's office, the handbook updates, and those will come up at our March 21st meeting. We will also, I believe, have a policy. We continue to work on policy, even though we're talking about doing a full review and update. So I believe that we will have an overdose reversal drug policy coming up in March. So that will come out to you, and we'll ask you to look at that. I continue to ask you to look at 0123, which is the Board of Education Code of Conduct. I really am hoping that we get some time to discuss that, but I don't think that we need to spend all of March 7th discussing that particular policy, but we're keeping that out there. And so those are all the items that I have for this evening. Is there anything else that should come as a board member report at this time? I don't see anything. All right. Then we will move to our student representative report. And we have Austin this evening. Yes, I think that would be best. So that people don't look at the back of, well, they know they can see you, but I think it's better up there.
All right, so I wasn't able, is this on? Is it still on? It is, okay. I wasn't able to make the pre-K through 4-1 tonight. I think Kate had something that she was supposed to do, so I got a couple quick snippets to share. So first, LPS and LES participated in an in-house 100th day of school canned food drive to support the local Life Food Pantry. The Tigers and their families donated over 3,300 food items to the food pantry. Also, LECC Tiger Cubs in the News were celebrated on January 23rd, and LECC will celebrate February TCIN, which is Tiger Cubs in the News, on February 27th during the class assemblies. To LIS and LMS, LMS staff recently participated in the QPR training, which stands for Question, Persuade, and Refer, and that's a training to help teachers learn to save a life from suicide. LMS 8th graders just finished their scheduling for their freshman year, and now administration will be moving to 7th graders, or counselors will be moving to 7th graders preparing for the 8th grade year. Congratulations to LIS Spelling Bee winner, Mazzy Hugh, sorry if I butchered that, and LMS Spelling Bee winners Jack Myers and Liam Manley. The LIS dodgeball tournament took place last week, as you might have seen the big bracket on the wall. Over 50 teams, including more than 400 students, participated to raise money for NEST. Congratulations to LIS's Loveland Valentine's Day poetry winners, Audrey and Beiruz. They attend the Chamber of Commerce Valentine Breakfast with their ELA teacher, Mrs. Smith. LMS Student Council hosted its winter dance last Friday. I got this report on Friday, so I'm assuming it went well, but I don't know for sure. LMS 8th grade will have a guest speaker actually tomorrow, a Holocaust survivor, and they'll talk about their experience, and hopefully that will be very educational and memorable, because I still remember when they came in and talked to us. Now to the high school. The award-winning Loveland Show Choir hosted Showfest, yeah. And it was a huge success. Thank you to the Loveland Music Boosters, Mr. Miller, students, families, and the custodians for all their hard work. Thank you to the PTO, who provided teachers and staff with hot drinks in January and Valentine's Day treats in February. Some exciting news. On last Thursday, the current juniors were told that they will be attending Washington, D.C. to make up for their class trip that was canceled in 8th grade due to COVID. So they're very excited about that. At the high school, February 28th will be a unique school day for all students. Seniors will be doing speed mentoring at the Oasis Conference Center. Juniors will be taking the official ACT. Sophomores will be taking a pre-ACT, and freshmen will be attending a seminar regarding empowerment and fulfilling one's potential. Congratulations to seniors Allie Colgate, Evan Osgood, Brody Mers, and Carmen Noy, who were National Merit semifinalists, and congratulations to the National Merit commended students as well. The Austrian dinner hosted by LHS German students and Air Ernst was a fun night of dinner and dancing. I heard that there was also some, the strings, one of the strings classes also performed there as well. Finally, seniors are beginning to publicly commit to university, so please consider following Loveland Co. 2023 on Instagram to see where the class of 2023 is committing. I also wanted to personally add that I agree Mrs. Chass is a great teacher, and I had her for honors chemistry, and she was really good. Also, I did want to also shout out Mr. Mitchell here, who has helped me so much through school with counseling. He's not even my official counselor, but he always helps me with scholarships and career and counseling and stuff. So I just want to shout you out. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Austin.
Thanks, Austin. Anybody have any questions or comments? Do we have another report, or did Austin cover it all? Okay,
And you had perfect timing.
very
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
thanks.
I'm envious of that timing.
So hello, my name is Kate Kerbacher. I'm a student representative. So I have the report on pre-K through 4th grade. Some ongoing projects are the mid-year map growth testing for students was conducted in reading and math from mid-January through the beginning of February. Teachers review these results to analyze progress and to plan for future instruction, intervention, and enrichment. This data allows teachers to identify strengths and weaknesses to best assist the students' learning. Updates, assessment results, and individual student planning will be shared with the parents during the mid-year parent conferences. And the mid-year parent conferences were completed on February 16th, and select families where the teacher felt that a conference was needed. LECC kindergarten students and LPS students also completed the Ames Web reading assessments in January. Our buildings continue to work towards accomplishing this year's goals through the building leadership teams. These teams gather data and building perspectives for next steps in preparation for planning for next year's goals. In January and February, LPS and LES conducted special education, reading intervention, and education data reviews. These reviews allow us to monitor students' progress and implement intervention and enrichment for individuals while analyzing building and grade level results. The LECC preschool team is starting this year's winter early learning assessment in ELA for all preschool students. This assessment helps to determine readiness for transitions to kindergarten. LECC kindergarten registration is now open, and families requesting a full-day kindergarten are to enroll by May 1st to ensure a full-day spot. The kindergarten roundup for the class of 2036 will occur on March 2nd at LECC. This event is intended for caregivers and upcoming kindergarten students for the upcoming school year to give information about the Loveland Kindergarten Program. So some other updates Valentine's Day parties took place in LECC, LPS, and LES on Tuesday and on February 14th. Many of the students really enjoyed those parties. LECC, LPS, and LES kicked off their annual magazine sale fundraiser on Friday, February 10th. The sale will run through Friday, March 3rd, and the funds raised will be put towards building projects, including books for classroom libraries at LPS and updated furniture for the LES cafeteria. So some staff and student accomplishments in the past couple months. LPS and LES participated in the 100th Day of School canned food drive to support the local Life Food Pantry. Our Tigers and their families just donated just over 3,300 food items to the food bank. LECC kindergartners and LPS first and second graders also celebrated the 100th Day of School on February 1st. It was a great celebration of the wonderful progress made by our Tigers. LECC Tiger Cubs in the news were celebrated on January 23rd. We will celebrate our February TCIN on February 27th during class assemblies. Some professional development update. The LECC and LPS teachers are continuing their monthly professional development with Kathy Schroeder from the Hamilton County CSE, focused on early literacy and the implementation of Being a Reader, LECC and LPS's new reading program. LES teachers also work monthly with HCESC with that program to enhance their reading instruction. Mr. Fancher and Mrs. Foran recently attended the High Ames Principal Cohort Meeting. This meeting examined current topics impacting our students and school. This was such an impactful experience for the principals and the school. Mr. Fancher and Mrs. Foran will also be attending the MAP Ohio Leadership Summit at the beginning of March. This summit will be focused on academic equity, utilizing MAP data to identify instructional strengths and areas of opportunity for students. So some upcoming events in these schools. On February 27th, Tiger Cubs in News will be the Tigers and Cubs News Recognition Assemblies. And March 2nd is the Kindergarten Roundup for all parents and families for the class of 2036. March 3rd, the magazine sale fundraiser will end. And March 3rd through the 9th is the LPS and LES Book Fair. March 6th through March 8th is the LPS Showcase Open House Nights. March 16th through the 30th, and March 16th and March 30th are the second graders field trip to the Rumpke landfill. And on March 17th is the Find Your Stripes Day at LES. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kate and Austin. I appreciate that. A couple of things that might benefit Kate and Austin. I have noticed, I believe on either the school Facebook page or some of the media, they are looking for volunteers for help for the after prom. So if anybody's looking for an opportunity to stay up all night, please make sure you check in there and see if you can help out with that. I was derelict in my duty as a Valentine lady. Austin mentioned a couple of the poetry winners. This year, the Valentine ladies had over 100 poems submitted. As you know, we take poems from kindergarten or pre-K through adult, and we had a great response for poetry this year. We had a whole kindergarten class that sent their poems in. So that was a fun job picking those. We had many entries this year from St. Columban. We take from homeschooled, Children's Meeting House, St. Columban, and the Loveland schools. And then, of course, there's an adult category, and it was a Loveland staff member who won in the adult category this year. It was Susan Craig. So we had a great showing of poetry that was entered and some great poems that were read at the breakfast. Mr. Broadwater was there. Mr. Setters was there. I think there were some good pictures on the school Facebook and school website showing that. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned those. Anybody who has any questions, I know we go through those reports really quickly. Some of the details are on board docs in the grade level building reports so that you can see those if you missed some of those and want to catch up with that. So that's the student representative reports. Now we move on to the less important people, superintendent's report. But, Mr. Broadwater.
Thank you, and I agree, I concur. I will say I love hearing from our student reps, Kate and Austin, thank you very much. I listen, I'm like, oh, I made that, and I missed that, and it's invariably you miss, there's so much going on. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention, my wife and I got to go to the Show Fest, I think I'm saying it correctly, and I think there were 6 maybe other schools that were there. And if you haven't been, it's pretty awesome. And what I saw was kids supporting each other, being positive, and just clapping for each other. And I think as adults, if we could learn from them, that would be great. They've supported each other, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I did not hear Loveland get named at all, and after about a half an hour, I'm getting a little upset. And my wife and I, well, what's going on? Why aren't our Tigers getting any awards? And I find out if you host, you don't get awards. I was better than that.
Those
so.
were just the finalists too. I think it was like 17.
Oh, wow.
That were
Okay.
there, so yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. Just to see kids treating each other that way was awesome. So I am going to turn it over to Dr. Puerta, who is going to talk about our Business Advisory Council. If you don't know, the Business Advisory Council is something that is required by the state of Ohio. You will find most school districts now are going through their educational service center. We are not. We are keeping it local so that we have control of it, and we are doing a lot of great things. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Puerta.
Thank you. Just to piggyback on what Mr. Broadwater was just saying, most districts do go through their educational service center. Here it would be Hamilton County Educational Service Center, where they do a lot of the facilitation and a lot of the work on behalf of the districts, and then the districts attend meetings quarterly. When I came to Loveland, it was a little bit of a shift, and I learned that Loveland has their own business advisory council. And so Loveland is very unique in that. And I've really, really enjoyed working with our business advisory council. And I feel like it's so much more authentic, and we get a lot more out of it having it here in-house as our own. We are really able to bring in people from our local businesses to help support us and push us forward, give us ideas for the classroom, and really partner with them. So I've really enjoyed it. We actually had our 3rd meeting today. We have a 4th one in April, and then we'll do it all over again next year with some new stuff. So what we're going to do tonight is just present to you the work that we've been doing so far this year and sort of where we're headed in the future, and then we can answer any questions you might have at the end. So I'm going to turn it over to Lynette Viox and Drews Mitchell, who are members of our Business Advisory Council.
Good evening. Okay, so this is this year's presentation. Some of you have seen this in the past few years. I think this is the 5th time that we've presented to you guys. Thank you. And it is very exciting to have this in-house, and I appreciate being a member of this as a business teacher at the high school, and I do appreciate working with our local business members. So as Dr. Porta mentioned, this is a mandate from the Ohio Department of Education, but I appreciate that we do it as more than a mandate. So the purpose of the state, per the state of Ohio Department of Education, is that it fosters cooperation among schools, businesses, and the community that they serve. This work ensures that the work of the educators aligns with the needs of the business. We meet quarterly, and the requirement is to report here to the Board of Education by March 1st of each year. And we are to report what the committee has done in the past and what the committee is going to do in the future. Our mission statement is on the website, but this is just an abbreviated version. The Loveland City School District Business Advisory Council pledges to address the following goals: the delineation of employment skills and development of curriculum to instill these skills, the changes in the economy and job market, the type of employment in which future jobs are most likely to be available, the development of a working relationship among businesses. But in essence, our goal is to be more of an action committee, not just a reporting committee. And hopefully you'll see that through what we have to present tonight. And it's also structured to be able to appoint subcommittees when necessary. That is the list of our current members. I won't read that to you, but just wanted to thank Eileen for being our board member representative, and also kind of want to make sure that you notice our business partners because they've been very active and helpful. So some of the highlights of our past accomplishments, we have sought input from outside sources to help guide our direction and aligning with the needs of our businesses. We have brought in the past, speakers from higher education, the UC Lindner Graduate School of Business. We've brought in people from the trades, the plumbers and pipe fitters, Local 392. We have brought in consultants from the Great Oaks, also from the Miami Township Fire Department for public safety, and multiple local businesses and chambers. Our accomplishments for this year, our focus continues to be on examining the changing workforce. Our guiding question, again, this year was, what is the connection to education? And we've done this through listening to the input from our Business Advisory Committee members and also analyzing current employment data provided by one of our members, Nick Winenberg, from Express Employment Professionals. We scheduled 4 meetings this year. As of tonight, we have completed 3 of those. So some of the important information we found through this data exploration is that we have a disappearing workforce. There are about 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day. In addition to that, the birth rates are lower. There are less babies being born to replace those baby boomers. So the projection over the next 18 years is that we're going to have less workers entering the workforce. Currently, there are about 2 jobs available for every 1 unemployed worker in the workforce. And another contributing factor is that historically, prime age workforce workers worked about 40, going on 50 hours a week, and the average worker now works about 36 hours a week, which is a loss of about 468 hours per year on average per worker. Another thing business owners have noticed that have brought to the table to us is the family dynamics have changed. And I kind of brought this up last year, but it came up again this year. And that is that with the pandemic, people lost jobs and people adjusted their expenses. And one partner stayed home with young children. They didn't go back to work, a lot of them. And that created another void in the workforce, which made supply down, demand was up. Pay grades are going up, which made those higher pay grades again, which made more flexibility for families to keep that person at home, and which created another void in the workforce, which made that feedback loop. And that's just another reason why there is that, another reason there's a gap in the workforce. Other things that business owners are noticing about the change in the workforce is that potential employees want more flexibility. Another thing that's come up a lot this year is unlimited time off has become a new thing. Also, something that's been a little more unusual is people are often choosing where they want to live and then going there and finding a job rather than finding a job and moving to where the job is. Just that flexibility happening because there is an abundance of jobs available. Because of this supply and demand, employees are being able to be more picky about their jobs. Another note that some of our employers pointed out for our students to notice is that clean driving record and background checks are important in many industries. Employers are entering a new phase of doing business and they have to start thinking differently. And one of those things they're looking at is that they're really willing to train employees for skilled positions so that higher levels of education aren't necessarily always necessary. They're looking for employees who fit the culture, have those soft skills and willingness to learn. The soft skills, again, that keep coming up, you'll see on this slide and the next, are communication, availability, and work ethic. So this slide I have put on here for several years because, again, we just keep hearing it year after year, no matter who our business partners are, no matter who the speakers that come to see us, we just keep hearing we want team players, we want critical thinkers, problem solvers, people that have communication skills, good work ethic, that drive and curiosity. It just keeps coming to the table over and over. So one of the things that you heard, I think, at your last board meeting was that there's a proposal on the table for a new course at the high school, which is the Leadership and Service Learning class. And in that class, so this is one of the actions that have come out of this committee, is that we do actually have a course that will incorporate these skills. So during this course, students will be learning and being able to put into action these skills: professional communication, team building, collaboration, critical thinking, and problem solving. Another action that has come out of this is with our business partners. We have some real world problem solving scenarios that they're bringing to our classrooms and collaborating with some of our teachers. So they're bringing the business leaders posing a problem, bringing it to the students in the classroom. Then the students will brainstorm about it, develop solutions, and then make a presentation to the business leader, which again is addressing that critical thinking, problem solving, communication, and collaboration, and having an intentional relationship building with our business partners, which is amazing. So if anyone out there listening would like to participate, there is a contact information there on that slide for you. So other great news is the Business Advisory Council applied for and was awarded the 2-star Business Advisory Council Award from the state of Ohio this year. And that was based on the following quality practices of developing professional skills for future careers, building partnerships, and coordinating experiences. So we're very proud of that. So some additional responses, Mr. Drews Mitchell is going to talk to you about some of that.
To continue on with what Mrs. Viox was saying, the student experience is really what this is all about. And we're so excited about what has taken place and also what's to come. And that to me is the most important part of what we're doing. The feedback from our leaders has been terrific, and it's affected how we approach students in terms of grade level presentations. We will work with classrooms, we'll work in small groups with students, with career cluster specific types of groups, and then we'll work one-on-one. And the individual meetings with students and their families often yield great results, and individual meetings then can lead to some individual opportunities as well. Those are addressed here. And this year in 2022-23, you can see the data points. We're particularly excited about the experiential learning that takes place with internships, pre-apprenticeships, and then long-term career shadow experiences. These data points are particularly exciting when we start to think about how it ties also to the soft skill development that was mentioned earlier. We're really very proud of the students, 23 so far that have earned the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal. If you're familiar with this particular program from the state, it's about soft skill development and working with leaders and mentors. And that number is, I think, I want to say, and I can quote this directly later, but 20 students more already than we had all of last year. So really excited about the growth there. I'd like to list each of our partners individually, and I promise not to take too long when bragging about each of the people who have stepped up to give students meaningful experiences. As we look at this list, you'll see a group of organizations from a variety of different types of industry that are all dedicated to the student experience. These are not students leaving and, let's say, going to the city of Loveland and standing behind a photocopier and making photocopies for the city. These are students who are learning behind the scenes aspects of each of these types of organizations. So we'd like to thank the city of Loveland, Forward Edge with our City of Loveland with government, Forward Edge with an IT pre-apprenticeship that's also in-house that we're particularly thankful for Reed Crumley. King's Veterinary Hospital had 1 student this year. Next year has agreed to take 4. Lemons and Limes for a retail perspective. Little Miami River Chamber Alliance, CC Collins does an amazing job of giving students an overview of business management, specifically with some ideas around marketing. Mainstream Boutique in Harper's Point, again, retail focused. Miami Township Fire and EMS, as well as administration, marketing, we can't say enough good things about. If you haven't had a chance to watch the videos that these gentlemen and ladies have put together about the experiences for students, please watch them, available on our website. Incredible behind the scenes work that they're doing to understand each of those. And the first of our pre-apprenticeships that were approved as a graduation pathway were found with Miami Township in EMS with a health science perspective. Nest, can't say enough good things about, obviously, within our community. We have students who are participating, understanding early learners processes, as well as nonprofit management. Nothing Bundt Cakes, again, retail perspectives. NovaCare for physical therapy, as well as athletic training. Tri-Health has developed a fantastic program for students to participate during the school day at Bethesda North Hospital. This is in development, and we're really excited to be the first of what we hope will be a group of schools that are offering students behind-the-scenes looks at healthcare. Vertical Drop retail right here in Loveland, and then an arts perspective we're really excited about with Whistle Stop Clay Works. So thank you to all of our business partners for the work that they're doing to help students.
So to address the future work as our community, or as our committee, sorry, we are going to continue to look at the economy and the job market. Our Business Advisory Committee will continue to collaborate with both Claremont County Chamber and the Little Miami Chamber Alliance to study trends in the local economy, explore the community and region, and our in-demand careers. The Business Advisory Committee will continue to collaborate with our business partners and our community to gain insights into the needs of the workforce and define that connection to our education, and to continually evaluate our membership and fill voids where necessary to best serve our students. So thank you for your time and attention. And if there's anyone that is interested in getting involved with the business advisory, please contact our superintendent, and there is his email.
Thank you. Any questions from board members?
I don't have a question as much as a statement of how appreciative I am as a board member to see all the work that you've put into this. You've taken something that Dr. Puerta pointed out that many schools treat as a boilerplate mandate from the state and turn it into an incredibly valuable experience for our community and our students. So I appreciate that, with a lot of work on your part.
Echo that. And from a personal standpoint, my daughter just found out she's doing the Tri-Health internship next year. And as someone who's thinking about going to nursing, but still not sure, what a gift that is to her to be able to try that out, know that before she goes off to college. So, I mean, there are real life impacts that are going to really help a lot of our students. So appreciate all the work.
Just to echo everything, the Business Advisory Council, we're very proud of everything we do for our kids. It's one of those additional things that you could just check a box, and that's not what these individuals do. They want to help kids. And that's why this district's as awesome as it is. To Lynette, thank you very much. You don't have to participate. You do, and I know you put your heart and soul into it. Druce, thank you very much for all you do. I know I'm pretty amazed. I don't know how you have so much time in your day for everything you do for kids as well. But in the spring, Druce will also have a luncheon with those business owners. So I want to say thank you to all the business owners as well. They don't have to do that. But they do it for our kids, and we appreciate it very much. And everybody on the BAC, I think it's a great process for kids. And that's what makes Loveland so special, is you want to do those extras, and that's from people like you. So thank you.
Thank you. While we're waiting, is Mr. Ames coming up next, Mr. Broadwater?
He is.
I just wanted to remind Kate and Austin that if they need to leave, they are certainly welcome to leave. They are welcome to stay till the end of the meeting as well. They've got work they need to do to finish up this quarter. We certainly understand that, so thanks.
So we're going to stay with the good news and the safety grant. Mr. Ames is going to talk a little bit about that. If you remember, board, we did receive a first round safety grant, and then the second round, Mr. Ames did apply for, and we did not receive it. And people thought maybe we had not applied, but we had applied. You don't necessarily always get them. And so this time we are extremely happy with not only receiving the grant, but the value it is. And what we'll be able to do with it. It is strictly earmarked for safety and security. It doesn't affect the general fund, but I'm going to turn over to Mr. Ames and let him talk.
All right, thank you very much. The grants that the state provided were $100,000 per building based upon the need of that building. Last year, we received two $50,000 grants, one for the primary, one for the elementary, and that paid for the paid for almost all of the new PA system in that campus. So we submitted for the next round, and as Mr. Broadwater said, it didn't come. I thought, okay, we're not going to get it. And then just email came in and said, oh, by the way, you've received $461,250 in safety grants. The submission that I made to them was $125,000 for installing tablets in every school bus. And the tablets, the way it will be set up is it will have, just like your GPS in your car, it will show the driver exactly what stop you're going to, what children you're going to be there. You will see a picture of the children. I see this as being an extremely good thing for a sub-bus driver. Right now, they have to have a piece of paper in front of them as they're driving down the street, looking around, trying to figure out where the children are at. So it will give them voice commands as to where to stop, and then they can check to make sure the children get on. Another amazing thing about it is it will provide parents the ability to see where their child's bus is as it is approaching their house. So they will be able to look at the mobile app and see, yep, I need to get out there. Oh, and also it will tell them when the bus will be there in the morning. So I anticipate people running down the street to catch the bus because they know it's getting very close. So we will be doing that. I was hoping to get it in this spring, but the company is so backed up with work, they will not be able to even install until fall. So we will sometime fall, winter, be kicking it off, learning it, and just trying it out to see how it works for us. The other part of it is video cameras throughout the district. We will be pretty much covering all of the exterior areas of every building. We will be able to make sure our children are going where they're supposed to be going. We can make sure that there's nobody coming on campus that should not be coming on campus. We will cover most areas inside the building. And while the cameras are somewhat expensive, the servers to capture all of this data, it's incredible amounts of data, are very expensive. So this grant will also cover the servers to capture the data. We anticipate capturing maybe 30 to 35 days of data. Typically, we found that covers everything we're doing. So total $461,000, adding on the $100,000 from last year. We only gave up $38,000 on the $600,000 that we could have received. So very good thing for us. It's going to take a while to get it all going, but it will help us for the long term. Would you like me to talk about the HVAC also while I'm here, or?
Sure, good.
Okay.
May I just say real quickly, I'm sure that there are very specific things that grant could be used for, so
Yes,
that,
yes,
you
it
know, all of
is.
that's within the parameters of what the grant
It will be locked down
allows.
very tight. So if somebody says, oh, I need this, we probably won't do this. So I placed an HVAC controls bid out on the street in January, anticipating getting it ready for the board to approve in February. We were ready to go up until Saturday or Sunday, and Rob called me and said, looks like we've got a problem. I did not put this little piece of data in the bid package that is required by law. So we pulled the bids. I'm going to rebid it right now, and we will have it ready for the March board meeting. I don't think it's going to cause us any problems. I was just trying to get a jump on this project to see if we could get it moving a little quicker. But none of the work can take place until summertime when the children are out of the business or out of the building anyway. So I had it, thought I'd done everything, but rather than take a chance on it being not absolutely correct, we pulled it and we'll redo the whole thing.
And just to jump in, John, I appreciate that. The reason for the whole project, it is the HVAC controls project with ESSER funds. For the last 2 years, you were able to do LECC. You were able to do LES, LPS. As you recall, with COVID, one of the biggest issues was air quality, and this addresses air quality. Unfortunately, federal money is running out, so the ESSER funds, I think, is paying for about 16.5% of this project. But really what you want to do, the controls, you don't want to have 2 buildings running the high-tech controls and 2 buildings with Commodore 64s or whatever the equivalent is. So it just makes sense. The issue that you have when you come with school projects is when is the best time to do everything? In the summer. And so you get a lot of projects that go in the summer with costs that are associated. So I appreciate there is no rush. We believe we can get it done when we do it in March. And again, this is completely separate from the general fund. This is all permanent improvement funding that is going to go towards the projects. We have some buildings that are a little older, and so we need to take care of them. And that's what John is doing. And I appreciate the process and going through the bidding. Every HVAC quality control that we did, we went through a specific bidding process just like this one, and we want to make sure we do it the same way.
And so we'll be doing the high school this summer, and then the plan is for next summer to do this campus so that then the entire district is up to speed. The existing controls in this building in the high school were put in 2009. So in essence, we're running the controls on Commodore 64 is a little bit old, but it's 13-year-old technology. The technology, the hardware is starting to fail. Software is just not where it is. And in order to provide the healthiest environment, we want to get everything up to speed. And we are putting in the bipolar. Thank you. Bipolar ionization in every air handler, which removes all of the viruses or the vast majority of the viruses. We did that in all 3 elementaries. We'll be doing it at the high school, and then next year we'll be doing it at this building.
And again, this is all permanent improvement funding. There is no general fund being appropriated towards any of this.
And I just add one more thing. I know that we talked about this earlier. One of the issues with lots of complicated systems like this is that companies want proprietary systems so that they have control over your need to go to them in the future for repairs and parts. My understanding is that these are different now.
All the new controls that we are doing are open protocol, and the hardware, that's for the software. The hardware, it is off-the-shelf items from any HVAC company. We don't have to go to XYZ company and be locked to them, so we can call anybody and have work done. So it's keeps you from being locked down to one vendor for the next 15 years.
And I don't know if anybody remembers, but there was a story of just recently the school in Massachusetts who had that issue with their lighting.
Oh,
one
yeah.
of the software pieces broke, and the company couldn't fix it for months. And when they did, they needed hardware as well. And so the lights have been on permanently in the school for like 11 months, which was not a money saver. At least the lights weren't off permanently in the school.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to some more good news. Our Clean Kitchen Award we received. Loveland Food Service received the Clean Kitchen Award during the February 13th Hamilton County Board of Health Board meeting. All the kitchens in every one of our buildings received awards and exceeded the requirements for being recognized. I think it's important to recognize our Director of Food Services, Chris Tracy. Chris is out in the buildings all the time. She is a director with title, but she is out cooking almost every day or out in the buildings running around and just works very, very hard. And so we're congratulating her on that. I'll say congratulations to Mr. Ames as well, who oversees the department, and also Michelle Antone, who helps in the administrative assistant realm. So congratulations. Yes. Oh. So Mr. Ames said this is the 12th year in a row, and no other district in Hamilton County has done that. So very good. Thank you. Another good news. Dr. Kathy Lorenz is a recipient of the 2023 OSBA Service Award. And I received this note from Gwen Samet, who said, on behalf of the officers, trustees, and staff of the Ohio School Boards Association, I would like to commend Dr. Kathy Lorenz on becoming a recipient of the 2023 OSBA Service Award. The Service Award is a distinct award and is part of our STAR Awards program. S for service, T for training, A for aptitude, and R for recognitions. Congratulations. Your efforts reflect a true commitment towards public education and the importance you attach to your role as a school board member. Thank you for your dedication. And this award will be presented, you mentioned March 9th, Thursday, March 9th, from 5 p.m. to 8:30. I will be attending. I think Mr. Giuffre as well. And say congratulations to you, and it's very well deserved, and thank you for all that you do for Loveland City Schools.
If any other board members would like to attend, please let me know.
I did mention at the Valentine's poem reading that you were in year 30, and I messed up. It's actually year 32 is what you said. So I apologize again for missing those 2 years. I am going to go ahead and jump into the presentation portion. And what I thought I was going to do tonight, I'm going to adjust a little bit. I've been getting a lot of questions about the state financial oversight and what exactly that means. So I was going to dig into it a little bit, but I'm just going to go through the one part because we worked today so that we could get our levy information out on the website. And I want to review that. I want to take some time and review that. So I do want to hit one slide here. The overview of state financial oversight if we do not have any additional revenue in 2023. Obviously, we have an issue up in May. The fiscal precaution, we did have an individual from the auditor, state auditor, come down and discuss the fiscal precaution. There's 3 bullets that I'll highlight. The negative cash balance in one of the first 3 years of the 5-year forecast. In this case, the forecast we would be looking at if we don't get additional revenues this year, we would be looking at the 3 years that I have highlighted in orange there, 2024, 25, and 26. The ellipse that I've got circled with the negative 1.676 million, that is the criteria that is going to put you into fiscal precaution. So there is no question that we will be in fiscal precaution without additional funds this year. I think trying to keep it at a general level, this is a governmental process. It can get a little bit murky. It's based on a forecast, but I think the best way I would explain it is if I had my financial advisor come to me, or better known as my wife, but if she said that, Mike, you're in fiscal distress, I'm going to put you in fiscal precaution, and I want to plan on how you're going to get out of that. I've now lost a little control over what I'm doing. So you're now going to get into, without additional funds, you're losing local control. You're going to have to provide a plan to the state of Ohio on how you're going to get out of that negative cash balance. The other part that I wanted to put on there, and I apologize if I jump around a little bit, but the last row, we put calendar days of cash on hand. And so the ending balance of 2023, you'll see it's $13 million. And people will say, well, that's a lot of money. Let's just keep using our cash reserve. Well, $13 million is 88 days cash on hand. So if you're sitting in my seat and you know you got to make payroll and you've only got 3 months of cash on hand, it makes you a little nervous because you don't have a contingency and things are going to come up. And so the 88 days cash on hand, if you look at your budget at home, I would think you probably have more than 3 months set aside for an emergency. So again, I know the numbers seem big, but the days are small. The second column there, the 2024, you get down to 64, so it's 2 months. And then 2025, you're down to a month. And then you can see what happens is it escalates quickly. When you look at your ending balances, if you look just in 2027, for example, you have gone from having a cash balance of $13 million to being down $10 million. And the thing I want to emphasize is that $13 million doesn't show up overnight. It doesn't show up in a year. It doesn't show up in 2 years. It doesn't show up in 3 years. It's been 9 years since we've had additional funding, and that $13 million has taken that long to get there. It will take 88 days for it to leave if we have to use it. And so I think it's important. We are to the point, as the leader of this district, I hear the word trust all the time. Somebody's going to have to trust the leadership and understand we're losing local control of this school district without additional funds. And it's not to be fear mongering. It's not to get people upset. I'm just being realistic. We have had enough experience in these seats in these type of problems that the 4.9 is only going to get larger if we have to continue pushing it down the road, and our kids are going to lose services. And so I think it's important. I'm going to leave it right there. That's the fiscal precaution. When you get into the next few stages, you'll see it's even more difficult. The last thing I'll point out is the 3 columns on the ending balance. where you have a -10, a -20, and a -33. The only way you get out of fiscal emergency is to show that you have 5 straight years of no negative cash balance. That's going to be tough. If you're down 10 million, 20 million, $30 million, that's going to be pretty tough to get out. And you're losing with every step, you're losing more and more local control of your school district and what you want to see for your kids. So the second bullet I've got up there, the Board of Education must approve a written plan to eliminate the deficit. That plan really is, it's not calculus, it's kind of pre-algebra. You're going to have to see what expenditures you can cut and how you can raise revenue. And so a levy is going to be a part of it. I've said many, many times, I dislike running levies. The state of Ohio says this is how we're going to fund our schools, so this is how we're funding our schools. We don't enjoy it. We try and keep it as reasonable as possible. The longer this goes on, the less reasonable it's going to seem, because you have a lot of cash reserves that are dwindling. The next page shows you, it's a sample letter from the Ohio Department of Education. The district will receive that. The 5-year forecast is going to be updated in November. If there are no additional revenues in November, we will receive this letter in December, and it will ask for a written plan for us to determine how we're going to get out of the situation that we're in. And that is going to be difficult without new revenues this year. So I'm going to leave it at that with fiscal precaution. Next month, I'll go over the next few steps, but I really have to emphasize to our community, it's time we're going to have to trust these numbers. It's time we're going to have to trust that we are trying to do what's best for our kids at a reasonable price, because we do a lot of great things for our kids that we don't want to see go away. Next slide. What we have, I'll spend a couple minutes on what has been put on the website. The levy facts, we tried to make a sheet that was as clean as possible to read. On the left-hand side, it says Levelland City School District has a 4.9 mil operating levy on the ballot on May 2nd. If approved, property taxes would increase by $172 per year for each $100,000 in county auditor appraised home value. The levy would allow us to continue our excellence. That's what we're trying to do. If the levy passes, you see the green box, continued fiscal responsibility to maintain low expenditures per student. We will always try and stretch the dollar as much as we can, because again, we don't like levies and we would like to continue doing great things for kids. We want to maintain class sizes, our student support, and course offerings. If the levy fails, first and foremost, the state fiscal distress process begins. You will see increased class sizes. Now look at that on the right-hand side. We have some of the worst class sizes in the entire state of Ohio. Fewer course offerings. Need for revenue is going to continue. It does not go away. Move towards state minimum services is what you would be looking at if the levy fails. On the right-hand side, we tried to give some numbers that are clear. 9 years since Levelland City Schools has passed a levy to receive additional funds. The next one, 98% of Ohio school districts have a better student to teacher ratio. We are in the bottom 2% when it comes to, it's kind of a class size measure. We're in the bottom 2% of over 600 school districts in the state of Ohio. I don't know if our Loveland community knows that. That's not where you want to be when you're talking about teaching kids. The $14.33 is just taking the 172 divided by 12, gives you $14.33 per month for every 100,000 appraised. Half of all Ohio districts spend more per student. So our expenditures per pupil, even though our revenues are very low, we earmark the majority of our expenditures towards our classroom. That's how we can get to 50%, even though our revenues are very, very low per pupil. We are in the top 2% in the state in the Ohio Department of Education scorecard. And I hear people say, well, you're not perfect. Well, we are perfect in that measure. We are. And that is something we should be proud of, and we should be proud of our kids. 92% of all Ohio school districts receive more money per student. That comes down to revenue. So you can see 92%, we're in the bottom 8% when it comes to revenue per pupil. We bump up to 50% with expenditures because we earmark it for our kids, and that's just doing what's best for kids. The next page we'll take a look at is kind of an interactive page that we tried to develop a roadmap. And again, you can do a deep dive into this, or you can simply read, but Adam, I'm going to look at if the 2023 levy passes, it's the same as what we had on the other sheet. You're able to click on an interactive button there, and you can read through, and I won't read it all, but you can get into some deeper statistics if you would like. When you come out of that with the levy fails, it shows you we've got the Ohio fiscal distress process where the gentleman from the auditor came down to talk, but we go through what it means for us and how we would have to react if the levy fails. Up above on the roadmap, the 2014, that is the last time a levy passed. If you click on that, the one example we put up here is in 2014, home value approximately $215,000. 2022, it's worth $258,000. The levy cost for both years is the same, and that's because of House Bill 920. We do not get additional funds. So what I say is we're basically on a fixed income until you have additional revenue. The last Loveland levy passed in 2014. The chart over there gives you the history of levies. This is the longest we've gone without additional funding in Loveland City School District in over 40 years. So it shows you that right now we are very, very tight when it comes to what we were trying to do for our kids. Looking at 2019, that was the levy that did fail, and that was part of a construction as well as operating levy. 2020 was simply an operating levy. That levy failed. You can see the district cuts underneath there, 50 staff positions, students. We lost high school busing, and without November passing, we will not be bringing that back. Student offerings reduced in music, gifted, libraries, a lot of different things, but in 2020, the levy failed. Last year, my first year, we were able to avoid some costs. ESSER funding helped. Our teachers and administrators have taken 2 straight years of 0% increase on the base. And then our OPSI group, our classified group, did that this year as well. Responsible spending allows district to postpone asking for additional funding. One example I would give you is using ESSER funds to supplant salaries versus giving out any bonuses or anything like that. Costs avoided in 2022. Again, the 0% base pay increase for everybody. Mr. Collier has started hiring less experienced teachers to manage costs that puts them on the beginning of the pay scale rather in the middle or the end, which obviously is less expensive. And so you can click on every one of those and we'll give you a little bit more information. One thing, go ahead and click on that again, Adam. If you look at teacher salary costs in Ohio, it's one chart that we put on here. In 2021, 2022, for example, the teacher salary, the average costs went up 2.3% for the state. Here in Loveland, the teacher salary costs went down 1.3%, went down 1.3%, the teacher average salary costs. And that's because of the hiring practice as well as the 0% taken on salary. So there's a lot of other information there. On the bottom, there is some more information with the 4 bullets. You will see highest academic achievement we've highlighted. If you click on the next one, Adam, fewer teachers per student. Loveland provides an excellent education. We are 594th out of 609 public school districts for our student to teacher ratio. So when I hear people say, well, you need to right size, if we were to reduce by even 5 staff members, we're going to be virtually the worst in the state of Ohio when it comes to class size. And that's where we are when you say right size. And moving on, the other 2 bullets on the page, less money per student and low cost per student, we've kind of hit. And I don't want to take too much more time on it so the board members can have questions. You can see that we're in fiscal distress, and this is going to be a financial crisis if we don't get this addressed. I don't know of any financial metric that's out there that shows that over the last couple of years anything has been mismanaged. When I hear trust, I need to know what that means because we're all going to have to trust each other because this is going to hurt our kids. And I will leave it at that.
Thank you. Well done on that, on this piece. I reviewed that yesterday. I just think it's a really helpful piece. It has a lot of information in one spot that I think paints a very clear picture of where we are and where we need to go. So thank you for putting that together.
It is, I failed to mention it's on the website. It's up right now. So if people want to go to it, they can.
Yeah, it is very user-friendly. My question is, you may have said it, is there any place where people can click to see what their increase would be if it passes, or, you know?
Oh,
saying
with
that
their
percentage versus
property,
property value?
yeah, we could, that's a good, we could put a calculator in there.
Okay.
We could do that. Yep. Yeah, you're right.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mike. That's a.
Thank you.
I guess I only have really one comment, and I don't want to belabor this too much, as I'm sure we'll hear about it over the next several months. I love the graphic. There's lots of information there. To me, the distillation of that information is very simple. We have been doing more with less for the past several years, and we're at the point where we're going to start doing less with less, which will hurt our children and our community. And I'm not sure why anybody in their right minds would want to see that. To suggest that Loveland Schools is somehow financially irresponsible, which is completely false based on metric after metric after metric,
Yes.
is almost lunacy at this point. Sorry to be so clear about that.
Thanks, I think. Anything else? Is that it for your report, Mike?
That is. I
Thank you
apologize.
very
Yes.
much. I mean, it was a good report. It's not a good report, but it was a good, clear report. So thank you. All right, then we move to Director of Human Resources. I don't think Mr. Collier thought he was going to be up quite that fast, but he is. So here he comes. Oh, I know, I was going to say the Business Advisory PowerPoint is not up on the website or on board docs. Can we add that in case people want to see that? Can we get that added in the Business Advisory Council
Yes, yeah,
presentation?
we'll get it
Can we
put
get
in.
that put in there. Thank you. So now we move to human resource recommendations. Mr. Collier, can we go ahead and can we do a resolution and then you can walk us through?
Sounds good.
So we need a motion to approve the recommendation of the Director of Human Resources, including resignations and employment of certified classified homebound substitute and supplemental positions for the 2022-2023 school year.
So moved.
Mrs. Washburn moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Swetchnow seconded. I will make a note that the human resource agenda items are in public content on Board Doc for those who are looking, and the FTE count ongoing report is also in Board Docs.
That's correct.
Okay. So any information for us?
I just want to point out a couple of things. So if you take a look at the top in section A, numbers 1 and 2, we have had 2 teachers who have done the necessary steps to say that they're going to be stepping away at the end of the school year due to retirement. Karen Knieven, who is a music teacher down at LECC, in addition to Thomas Sutton, who is an LIS 6th grade teacher as well. And then if you look at the very bottom of that list, number 11, I was able to have a conversation with a teacher who was on a leave of absence right now, but that's Trisha Niskern, and she is planning on resigning at the end of the school year. She's an employee with us, but she's on a leave of absence, and she's going to be stepping away. So I just want to make sure I want to have a chance here publicly to thank these folks for all of their dedication, for all of the years of service that they have provided for Loveland community and specifically Loveland families and students. We're going to miss them and wish them a great retirement, and for Trisha, whatever she has next on her list of endeavors, we wish her the best of luck.
So my son's in 11th grade and, has friends over, and they all still talk about Mr. Sutton and how much they love him.
Yes, Tom is a great guy. That is the building that I got to spend the most time of being the principal of the intermediate school. So I've known Tom for, 20 years now. He is a great person, and he has this very unique ability to establish relationships with kids. He's a little different, a little quirky, and it works for 5th and 6th grade, I'll tell you. He is very good at what he does, and we're going to miss him. A couple of other things to point out are that in the B section, the supplemental position piece here, and you can see there's different universities listed where these teachers who have had they're a cooperating teacher for some student teachers. All of that money is not our district's money. The universities pay us, and we then in turn pay that same exact amount of money, just making sure that people understand that we're not, that's not coming out of general fund as a cost for us. We receive that money from those universities and then just pass it on. Something else to point out would be there is a change in the fine arts section. You'll see here, there's an adjustment to our May agenda. That was May 17th of 22 with some of our drama and assistant drama director spots. You can see that they're splitting those up more. And then we have spring athletics. That's something that's typical. We have our spring sports season that's coming up. The section C, the home instruction piece, there are number 2 and number 3 both say up to 25 hours, and those dates are the same. That's not a typo. Those actually are the date ranges for those. So if anybody had any questions about that, when I first was putting it in here and checking it, it made me think, wait a minute, that can't be right. Those dates can't be the same, but they are. And then in addition to Tricia Niskern's late addition to the agenda, the 2 items here at the bottom that are in yellow, which are a new monitor, and yes, it is true, a bus driver who stepped away from us and was done working has come back to us and wants to continue to work, which is really great. So we are super happy to welcome Lynn back to the team. We have not been able to say, we're still way under bus drivers for the year, but wanted to make sure to point it out that we are super glad that he's back with us and driving our kids.
Thanks.
Questions for me?
I have a quick question on spring athletics. I know when I first looked at this list, when it was added, there were some to be determines in there.
Yes.
Can you tell me if they have been filled with people or they just were removed, so they'll be coming later?
Correct. I had Judy and I remove them today because we were waiting, hoping that we could get those recommendations and have them in here. But I believe there were 3 total, and they came off today. And next round, we'll make sure to be putting them on.
You took away my chance because I was going to say, we're not going to approve TBDs,
That's
right?
right.
We're going to, so they came off. That's what I was checking on. Thank you.
Hey, Garth, quick question we had some people questioning when the FTE head count would come out, because we promised the Board of Education we were going to publish that. The timing of what you do every month and have done every month is what?
So this report, so people have probably noticed, like if you're, when the board agenda goes live, the HR section, because of these late addition pieces, because if we put it up and then I pull it down and change it and then put it up again, depending upon when somebody might check it, they might be looking or printing off something that's not the most accurate. So my particular section, I have those always in administrative section, and then I move them from the administrative section when it's close to being, that day of the meeting. So the FTE chart will always be in this HR section, and it'll always be there sometime during the day of our meeting. And then, of course, it lives there and rests there in board docs after that. And the same with my recommendation sheets. So if people have questions about that, I will be glad to tell them or explain that that's the process that we go through. And really, that's just about, I wish that I could just be like, well, we're just going to cut off everything that happens. It's just things keep coming. And we want to be as efficient as we can and get things on the agenda if we've already had them come through the office. So.
Perfect. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on those?
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzenow,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
and Dr. Lorenz.
Yes, motion carried. And then finally, in your report, Mr. Collier, I'll make a motion to approve the 2 student field trips that are listed. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Washburn seconded. Those are listed there. Anything else you want to tell us about those? Or I think they're pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, they are self-explanatory. They are just, anytime there's a trip that is overnight or out of state, we like the board to make sure to know kind of what's going on, where we have students coming and going. In your administrative section, you will see kind of like the permission slip checklist piece. That was missing Mr. Broadwater's signature, and just before the meeting, I was able to get Mike to sign a couple of those documents, so it should be updated and correct in your administrative section.
Any questions or comments on those field trips? All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetchnow.
Yes.
motion carried.
Great.
And I think that's it.
I do have 2 more quick things.
Okay.
Really sorry.
No, that's all right.
One being that if, in reference to the FTE chart, please always, for anyone, for board members or anyone who's watching or who's here in the meeting, please make sure that you double check at the bottom of the page. I've been giving kind of like an update when it comes to what were the changes. So when you just look at all the numbers, it's lots of numbers. But you can see I've basically kind of said, hey, this particular column here is a change, and try to explain how things go. That piece, reading that piece can be very helpful when you're looking at it. That's just something I wanted to make sure to add. And one other thing, earlier, Lynette and Drews were up here talking about the workforce and how things are changing. I wanted to explore, Mike, the idea of the unlimited time off for me. How do you think that might roll?
Keep it up, you might get it.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll take that as a no
Now,
for
you know,
right
with
now.
unlimited PTO, your supervisor still has to approve it all. So he
Yeah,
can give it
there
to
you go.
you.
When I saw it up
Theory.
there, it was a great presentation. When I saw the people are interested in unlimited time off, I thought, well, yeah, of course they are. It-
You're all in on
Isn't,
that,
right?
yeah.
Who isn't interested
Yeah,
in
so-
unlimited time off?
That's all. All righty. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll then move to the treasurer recommendations, treasurer reports. And so, Mr. Giuffre, any report before we do the items, or can we?
Want to get a motion and a second for discussion? I can give a report
Okay.
before, either way.
All right, well, we need a motion then to approve the amended appropriations and to accept the financial reports for January 2023.
So moved.
Mrs. Washburn moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Swetchenow seconded.
So-
So questions or a report from Mr. Giuffre first? Go ahead.
So the reason for the language is because the language of the acceptance versus approval is because the appropriations are a compliance issue, and so we are approving. The board is approving the amended appropriations, whereas they're accepting the remainder of the reports. And so just that distinguishing that. On the reports, I've added a few things. The financial binder for the month, I thought is a pretty nice presentation if anyone's looking for detailed information as well as a big overview. So there's 4 components to this. One is a monthly report that looks very much like the footnotes to the financial statements, except it's very specific to the month over month, year over year. And so as you look at it, you have to do a little bit of thought, because if a number doesn't match, it's because of a timing difference, something changed, or it's wrong. And so, for example, you see in that report that there's $4.6 million more. Well, we got our advances in January, so that'll even out in the next month. Things like that in that report. And then the overview shows where we are current to date based upon our projected and actual versus our forecast. The next is basically, it's called an SM2, State Module 2, which is a report of projected versus actual, actual versus projected for the remainder of the year. And the last one is an analytic detail that will keep you up at night, 6 pages of analytic detail, so you can go and look. And if you look, you'll see something that I want to point out under the category of good news, because when there is inflationary trends towards the cost of borrowing money, there's also inflationary trends to the cost of investing money. So I want to give you some numbers here because they're hard to believe. And I won't play guessing games, but in the month or today, Star Ohio is at 4.91%. 4.91%. I haven't seen that in a long time. But as important as that, the average for Star Ohio for the month of January is 4.56. Does anybody want to guess what the average was in 2022 for the month of January? A little bitty number called 0.1.
I was going to say 0.3, so I was
We've
close.
gone from 0.1 to 4.56. Now, I personally am excited about that because currently we're at $275,000 in earnings, and that's as of January. Last year, for the entire year, we made $66,000, or just a little above that. So that's wonderful. It helps to offset some of the inflationary charges, but not as much as we would like to, because in the appropriations that you're about to approve, there is a $200,000 increase. This would be something that I'd normally would take from contingency and just bring it in so that we don't have to change the appropriations. Without that, we're actually increasing and refiling and resubmitting to the Hamilton County Auditor's Office. So when I didn't explain it as well as I would like to, it is a budgetary compliance thing. And so $120,000 of that are special needs costs, which include additional services that we are providing, increased in services that we're providing. And so that $120,000 is increasing those services through the end of the year. And then fuel, believe it or not, even though we have that dramatic difference, we haven't really, well, we're experiencing now a full year of increased fuel prices. And so we're looking at another $80,000 of fuel to get us through the end of the school year. So that's $200,000 that's increased to the general fund in the amended appropriation. So good news, bad news, but certainly the interest earnings is, it's just remarkable, that kind of change. Usually it doesn't come up as quick as it goes down. It's been since 2019 and 2020 that we've had these kinds of returns on our investments. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, but I think that you hit a great point that I know is a sore point about contingency funds. And it makes the accounting and the more difficult if every single time you need to go back and then we reapprove or refile to the state of Ohio for things as simple and as expensive and dramatic as the gas for our bus costs more money. So I appreciate all the work that you've done to keep it straight and keep it so that everybody can understand it.
Thank you. Just like the good old days.
Yep.
All right.
Any other questions? Can we vote on that?
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Dr. Schwetchenow?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes, motion carried. Thanks. All right, and then we have a donations item, and I will move to accept the donations that are listed on the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Washburn seconded. So you see those listed there. Donations for the esports team and for the boys lacrosse team. Questions, comments? Can we vote on that?
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Dr. Schwetchenow?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Motion carried. Looks like the business manager, Mr. Ames, you have the most resolutions. I'm not sure that's a positive thing. But but we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items under Mr. Ames' report. And is it good with you if we go ahead and make those motions and then we can have discussion about them? Am I doing something wrong, Mr.?
Oh, I was just wondering if you're going to a consent agenda on it. You're not.
Can we do that?
Sure
Put
can.
all of them together.
Do we need to amend the agenda to do that?
I believe that we can just make a motion to have a consent for items through 6.1 through 6.4, 6.5.
Yes.
All right, if we can, if I don't hear any complaints from the board, we will discuss them all. We've got So I'll make a motion that we approve items 6.1, disposal of school buses, LPS renovation project change order, the 2023 E-rate, participation in the interlocal purchasing system, and a contract for the Loveland High School bleacher project. I'm making a motion that we approve those 5 items
By consent.
by consent. Is there a second? Reverend Eilert seconded. Now we can have discussion about each of the individual ones. So why don't we just go through them? I think the school bus disposal has been explained in the report, unless you have questions about it. They have been fully depreciated and have little or no value, so they are being disposed of for scrap. Any questions about the school buses?
Well, I would just point out that we spoke about this at the financial committee meeting. There's 2 things of note. One is we've already stripped as many parts as we can to keep our other school buses running out of these, and there's no further value to keeping them. And the second one being to note the original cost of these buses in 2003, almost 20 years ago, was $53,000, and now we're up to paying about
95 to 97,000.
97,000 for buses. So again, just an example of how inflation bites into our budget over time.
Any questions about the buses? The LPS renovation project, I just want to be sure there's a hyphen in there. It's my understanding that that change order is a deduct, correct?
It is a deduct, yes.
So I'm wondering if in the minutes, we want to put a, instead of just the hyphen between project and the amount in parentheses, we want to put a minus sign in front of that because it is a change order that is a deduct. Am I right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'd make it a positive, but okay.
I was gonna say,
A double
yeah.
negative.
The parentheses.
Hyphen and a negative.
It's okay. I'll
The
I'll write that
hyphen
it's
will
a-
be
I'll write the
removed
word
and the
deduct.
negative.
It
will
just
move to
looks to
parentheses.
me, the way it's printed on there, it looks to me like it's a hyphen, not a negative.
I'll
I
put the
understand
word
how the math,
deduct in.
I understand how the math works. I'm just saying it doesn't look like it's a deduct.
I will make sure it does.
So it's really an English problem and a typesetting problem.
It's a formatting, yes. It's not a math problem. It's a formatting thing. I wanted to make sure it was understood. That's all. You can put the minus sign wherever you want. All right, the E-rate. We might need a little
Explanation.
explaining on that. Mr. Ames.
Without going into the exact numbers of it, every year, every public school district in the country applies for E-rate money, and that is a federal program, and that it is based upon your free and reduced lunch count. And Loveland has a very low free and reduced lunch count, but we still receive a 40% discount on all of the items that we purchase, and these are a very specific group of items. It can only be for infrastructure of technology, being cabling, access points for wireless, switches, that type of item. And then the bids are all submitted to a state organization who then puts them out for bid for 20-some days. And once they come back in, then you just pick the 2 winners or the 1 winner. And for our switches and access points, it was Forward Edge. And for the battery backup for all of our switches and servers, it was HCC, which is a local company here in Loveland. So we purchase these items, it gets installed, and then we get a rebate from the state through the federal government.
Dare I ask what an extreme switch is? Could we not have a
It
non-extreme
is a
switch?
really, really good switch. No,
thought I'd
it's a
ask.
brand name.
Okay, thank you. I
Yes,
thought
just
maybe
a
I
brand
didn't
name.
know what kind of switch an extreme switch
Like
was.
there's
you.
Arubas, there's Cisco's, there's Extreme, just a manufacturer.
Thank you. The facilities committee probably knew that, but I didn't know
I forgot to bring that forward to the board.
that. Thank you. All right, and then the next two items are related, correct? The one is participation in the purchasing system, and that has bearing on the contract for the bleacher project.
Correct.
Information on that.
Okay, so the bleachers at the high school main gym are the original bleachers from 1992. And this entire year, we have been fighting to get them to move in and out. We have to assemble 15 or 20 kids to pull them out. Sometimes the motors work. They have just reached the end of their life. And it is a very tight commodity. And we found that there are 2 slots left in the manufacturing process to be able to get them to us and installed for this summer. So that's why it came forward today, just so we can grab that, one of those last 2 slots to get them in this summer.
And can you go into the TIPS process and how that helps with this decision-making and cost for us?
Yes, TIPS is, there are a number of purchasing consortiums throughout the country, and they kind of group off of each other. TIPS is actually located in Texas, but it has, it serves, I believe, every state in the country. They pre-bid specific items. They pre-bid bleachers and buses. We purchase our buses through a consortium. So all you have to do is say, I need 675 seats for my gymnasium, and the price is built upon that price per seat. And it is been, as I say, it's been bid. It's all been done through state required or state mandated methodologies.
And what you found through looking into this was that joining this TIP system was a better deal than we could get through anyplace else.
Yes, it is. Plus, you are able to know what product you are getting. You know that the name escapes me of the bleacher manufacturer, but there's only 2 or 3 good bleacher manufacturers, but there's a lot of bleacher manufacturers. So you want to make sure that you are able to get the one or the 2 groups that are going to serve you. And this company and another one, both are part of consortiums. Boardman. Thank you, Boardman.
And so what you're saying is that TIPS has done some of our due diligence for us by picking out the manufacturers that are known to have a quality product.
That's correct.
And to go back to feed into that, the cheapest bleacher is not necessarily the best bleacher.
When you're dealing with bleachers with kids jumping up and down, oh, you want the best bleacher you can lay your hands on.
Anything else?
And I would say there's one more thing, and again, we discussed this in facilities. We've talked extensively about trying to do our best to keeping our costs down. I understand that this is the permanent improvement fund, which is different than the operating fund, but nonetheless, that's also being pinched over time from inflationary costs. Why is this necessary to do now? I mean, okay, 15 kids have to pull the bleachers out and the motors don't work, but okay.
Okay, so it does become a safety issue. If you're pulling bleachers out, there is an obvious chance that someone can get hurt doing that. And whenever there's even that chance of it, and we know about it, we know that there's a defect in the product, someone does get hurt, we are then liable for the damages to that student. Another interesting thing is when we built the high school in '92, ADA did not really, it was not a real thing. Now ADA, we have a lot of grandparents that want to come and see their grandchildren play basketball. A number of them are in wheelchairs. We have no place for a wheelchair-bound person to sit because the bleachers were never intended for that. Now they have special sections that are pushed back exactly the right dimension to be able to accept wheelchairs. So we are taking care of the liability issue, we are taking care of the ADA issue, and they have done their 33 years of life, so they're way beyond their lifespan.
I don't know, I did 32 years
Right.
here.
If
I
you were,
came- I came with the bleachers, you're right.
I bought those bleachers.
You did, you were before me.
Not by myself, I didn't. 4 other people and I bought those bleachers, but
But what Dr. Sweats now says is very true with the Permanent Improvement Fund. When we passed it in 2007 or 9, I could buy a bunch of buses at $55,000 each. Now I get 1 bus for every 2. So that we have to be so careful on everything that we're doing now because it is not what it used to be when it was first passed.
If I could just jump in real quick, the safety issue, we vetted through our athletic director, Mr. Bryant. I had him go around, take pictures and give me a report on why now. You know, obviously you'd like to not have to spend money if you don't have to spend money. He has several instances where there's plastic, part of the bleachers have been broken off over the years, and he has had people cut their legs. We do not have some of the hand railing. That is, the safety hand railing is gone and obsolete now because the bleachers are so old. So this is something that, believe me, Mr. Ames, myself, Rob, you always want to try and get as much life out of anything that you can. But this is not just an athletic deal either. We have, just like the Show Fest, we had them in there. So you have a lot of people in there. We do have a lot of elderly coming in, and kind of what John had talked about with the ADA is a great point.
Any other questions? All right, so this vote will be a consent agenda for those 5 items. Mr. Giuffre, can we vote?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzner,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carries. There are a few board resolutions left on the agenda here. The first one is membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association. Is there a motion to authorize membership?
Second.
Reverend Eilert moved and Mrs. Washburn seconded. This is a necessary item each year so that our students can participate in Ohio high school athletic events. Any questions? Mr. Giuffre?
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzner,
Yes.
Motion carried. The next item is new course proposals for the 23-24 school year. These are the courses that were introduced to the board at our last meeting. And so is there a motion to approve those courses? Reverend Eilert moved, and I will second. Are there any questions at this time? They are the same ones we heard about. One of them was mentioned this evening in the BAC report. So, and these are, as we like to put it, FTE neutral courses. These are not courses that are adding any teachers for these courses. All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzner,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
The next item is the OSBA Policy Services Contract. Before I make that motion, which I would do to move that we join that, I would give the board an opportunity to ask that this motion be tabled. If you don't feel you have enough information, you're not ready to vote on it. So I'll give you a second for that if you're.
Kathy, I would, if you don't mind, because you know this, although we've all been here, except I don't know that Jonathan's been here for all of it. So we all have this information. Why are we doing this now?
We do not have to do it this month. We
I just
need
mean
to
in
get,
general. Yeah.
we need to get our policies in order. And we have made several attempts, I think, over the past year to see how we can best continue operating. We have some issues with the way consulting is working for us right now. So we made an attempt to do some work with our legal counsel to try and get things fixed. I think perhaps we were hoping when we made that move that we would be able to just work with legal counsel and do policy that way. I think we're finding that we're not able to complete that policy work on our own. I think we are finding some difficulties with the current consulting contract. I believe that this will give us some economies once we get through this redoing of the numbers. I hate to have us redo the numbers, but I think that it will be more economical, and I think that it will work more smoothly for us if we make this change. So that's why I'm recommending. But again, I want the board to have time to make the decision. If you feel you need time to think about the information you got this evening, read over what was presented, we can do it next month as well.
Well, I can speak to my point of view on it, which is as much as I'm extremely happy to be a new member on the policy committee, I would certainly like somebody to be able to help me make the decisions about how we need to go forwards in presenting that policy to our school and our community and our administration. And I think this is a very good idea. I know personally from dealing with Neola that it got somewhat haphazard and a little bit disorganized in my mind through no specific fault of anybody. And I know that you've done an incredible amount of work with the significantly less expensive option that we chose, and it's too much for one person to do, or too much for two people to do, even with legal help. So I think it's a very good idea to move on to OSBA, and I think that this price is reasonable. And I think it's a very important issue that if we don't get it right, we could find ourselves, much more expensive problems.
Did we have the price of
Yes.
we were paying before?
Yes. So the initial services in this first year is 11,000. Thereafter, it's 1,040, which is significantly less than Neola. And the updates are quarterly. They're not charged. Neola's updates are charged, and they are semi-annual at about $1,200 to $1,400. And may I just say, after working with Dr. Lorenz for the past 32 years almost, I think that this is also a great preparation for a time when we're not going to have Dr. Kathleen Lorenz overseeing our policy. And we'll have Kenna to help us through that.
I just saw Dr. Swetchnow say it's going to be me. So I think he
Be
just
very
volunteered to be the policy committee. So. All right.
Are there other organizations out there? Is it Neola or OSBA?
It's do-it-yourself, Neola, and OSBA.
And do we know like how many districts use Neola versus OSBA?
I don't know specifically.
I did not count. I have looked at a lot of policies over time, trying to figure out what to do, and there are several in this area, and I'm not going to say, I know that Sycamore uses OSBA. I believe that either Madeira or Marymount or both use OSBA. I have looked at a lot. I cannot give you a number.
And-
My impression, and this is merely an impression, and Kathy knows much better than me, is that Neola had the lead on it and captured the vast majority of districts, but they've behaved somewhat like monopoly, where they've just said, here's our price, and it always seemed to be more expensive than.
And I believe what happened was that Neola capitalized on the technology so that everything was nice, bright, and shiny and integrated with board docs. And I think OSBA was a little behind on that because at one time OSBA was the only game in town. So, yeah.
All right. Well, then I may be corrected, but I'm going to go ahead and move to approve the contract for policy services with OSBA. Is there a second?
Second.
It was in stereo. Mrs. Washburn seconded.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eiler,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetznow.
Yes, I just have one teeny tiny caveat. Just the link says OASBO, OASBO, on the agenda, and then the.
Oh, thank you. Thank
That's a
you.
Freudian slip on my part.
I did not notice that. Thank you very
No
much.
problem. The contract actually says OSBA.
It does, good. I didn't see
Yes.
that. Yes, OASBO is a thing.
I know.
It's not this thing, though.
My thing, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, so then the motion carried with the correction of OASBO. Thank you. See, you're going to be great at
That's
policy.
right.
It's just going to be great. Okay, the last thing on the agenda, I will make a motion to approve an addendum to the superintendent's employment contract. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Dr. Swetchnow. Just for information, the addendum is currently in administrative content. It will be moved when, if this motion carries. It is simply an addendum to the contract that was discussed after our evaluation of our superintendent, and it was noted that there was an omission or a difficulty with the original employment contract that caused harm that was not intended. And so there has been, the board agreed to a change in an annuity amount for Mr. Broadwater, and this is to recover from that, again, unintended point in the contract. That's all that this is. There will be, in the not too distant future, negotiations for a new contract for Mr. Broadwater, but all this is at this time is the addendum. Questions? All right, can we vote on that?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Dr. Schweitzer,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carried. I see that it is almost 8:30, 8:29. Any other business needs to come before this board? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mrs. Washburn moved. Is there a second? Dr. Swetch now seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody's opposed, right? Motion carried. I have the meeting adjourned at 8:30.